I've spent 62 years of my life believing I was doing everything right, waking up early, working late, achieving everything I set my mind to. People applauded me, envied me, called me a shining example of success, and I believed them. I truly did. But you know what's funny, or maybe tragic, about this whole story? My greatest achievement, the one that should have been the pinnacle of my existence, was precisely what destroyed everything that truly mattered. And today, at 84, sitting here in this silent house, I finally understand the price I paid for that so-called victory. Let me tell you something nobody dares to say when you're young and full of ambition. That achievement you're chasing so hard, that goal that consumes your every day and night, might very well be the gateway to your biggest regret. I know it sounds pessimistic, even negative, but it's the raw, unvarnished truth I learned after 8 decades living in this world. And if you're watching this now, maybe you still have time to avoid making the same mistake I did. My name doesn't really matter, but my story does, because it's probably similar to yours, or to someone you know. I was born into a simple family. My dad was a factory worker, my mom a seamstress. I grew up watching my parents work themselves to exhaustion just to put food on the table, and from a young age, a very young age, I swore to myself that my life would be different, that I wouldn't go through the same hardships they did, that I'd be somebody, that I'd conquer the world, and I did. At least, that's what everyone thought. By 32, I was already one of the most successful businessmen in my city. I built a company from the ground up with a lot of sweat and sacrifice. I worked 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. Holidays didn't exist for me. Weekends were just 2 more days to work. While my friends enjoyed Sundays with their families, I was in the office planning my next move. While others took vacations, I saw opportunities to expand. And it worked. My business grew exponentially. I started with a small hardware store, and within 10 years, I had a chain with 15 branches spread across the region. The money started rolling in. For real, I bought a big house, imported cars, designer clothes. People started respecting me in a different way. When I walked into a room, conversation stopped. Everyone wanted to talk to me, wanted my attention, my advice, my approval. I was at the top. I had won. Or at least, that's what I thought. But let me tell you about the day the penny finally dropped. It was a Saturday morning. I was 58. I was in my office, as always, reviewing contracts and planning expansion into 3 more cities. My cell phone rang. It was my daughter, Clara. She was 32 at the time, the same age I was when I started my empire. But when I answered, it wasn't her voice I heard. It was a nurse from St. Luke's Hospital. Clara had collapsed at work. Extreme stress, they said. Complete burnout. Blood pressure through the roof. Signs of physical and mental exhaustion. She was admitted for observation. I rushed to the hospital faster than my nearly 60-year-old legs would allow, and when I got there, when I saw my daughter lying in that bed, in room 312, pale, exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes that looked like holes in her face, you know what I saw. I saw myself. I saw the same empty look I had when I looked in the mirror at 40. I saw the same unhealthy obsession with work, with achievement, with proving something to someone. And in that moment, with the smell of the hospital filling my nostrils and the beeping of machines in the background, it hit me. I hadn't passed on values to my daughter. I had passed on a curse. a curse disguised as ambition, determination, a will to win. But deep down, truly deep down, it was just fear. Fear of not being enough, fear of going back to being poor, fear of disappointing myself. Clara was following in my footsteps with frightening precision. She worked for a tech multinational, wanted to climb the career ladder, wanted to achieve, wanted to prove she was capable, exactly like me. She barely saw her husband, Rodrigo. They'd been married 5 years, but seemed more like roommates than a couple in love. She had little time for her own hobbies, lived tired, stressed, always rushing from one meeting to another, always answering emails until midnight, always sacrificing weekends for urgent projects. And I, who should have been a present father, an example of balance, had been nothing but a shadow, a financially successful shadow, professionally respected, socially admired, but a shadow nonetheless. I had taught my daughter how to work, but I had forgotten to teach her how to live. I sat beside her bed and held her hand. It was cold, and there, in that moment of silence, I started recalling all the times I hadn't been there. Her high school graduation, I was late because I had a meeting. Her wedding, I spent half the reception on the phone dealing with a problem at the St. Charles branch. Her 30th birthday, I didn't even go because I was closing an important deal in Curitiba. Do you know why this hurt so much? Because I finally realized I had dedicated 60 years of my life chasing something that wasn't worth it. And worse, I had taught my daughter to do the same. I had created a chain of suffering that was passing from generation to generation. Tell me in the comments, are you falling into this trap too? Are you so focused on achieving, on winning, on proving your worth that you've forgotten to live? You can just write, I am sacrificing, and complete it with what you're neglecting because of work or your ambitions. Sometimes, when we put it into words, when we admit it out loud, or in this case, in writing, the penny drops. And you know what? Your comment might be the wake-up call. Someone else needs to snap out of it before it's too late. So tell me, what are you sacrificing? After that day at the hospital, after seeing my daughter in that state, I started rethinking everything. And that's when the truth appeared, raw and painful as an open wound. My greatest achievement, that company I built with so much pride, that empire that gave me status and money, had cost me absolutely everything that truly mattered in life. It cost me my marriage. My ex-wife, Beatrice, left me when I was 43. And you know what's worse? I didn't even fully realize our marriage was falling apart. The signs were all there, plain as day, but I was blind. She tried to talk to me several times, said she felt distant, that our family needed me, that money wasn't everything. But I always thought she was exaggerating. I always had an excuse ready. I remember the day she packed her bags. It was a Thursday afternoon. I got home at 10 at night, after another endless day at the office, and found a letter on the kitchen table. She'd taken Clara, who was 15 at the time, and gone to live with her mother. The letter said she was tired of eating dinner alone, tired of sleeping alone, tired of raising our daughter practically by herself, tired of competing with a company for my attention and affection. And you know what I did? I was upset for a few days, but then I dove right back into work. I used it as an excuse to work even harder. After all, I thought, if I don't have a family to come home to, I might as well stay at the office where I'm valued, where I'm important, where I make a difference. What cruel irony! I was important at work, but irrelevant at home. And I chose to stay where I felt important, without realizing I was choosing illusion over reality. Beatrice rebuilt her life 2 years later. She met a history teacher, Marcelo, a simple guy who earned a fraction of what I did, but who had time. Time to take her to the movies, time to cook together on weekends, time to travel and see new places, time to have real conversations about dreams, fears, hopes. And she was happy with him. I saw it in her eyes when she'd come to pick up Clara for visits, a kind of light, easy happiness she never had with me. My success cost me my daughter's childhood, and that eats away at me to this day. I lost everything. Her first word, which was, "Daddy," I didn't hear because I was on a business trip. Her first steps, I didn't see because I was in a meeting that lasted all day. Birthday parties, there was always an important client to attend to. School presentations, there was always a deal that couldn't wait. I remember once, Clara must have been about 8. She had a dance recital at school. She'd spent weeks rehearsing, showing me her little steps at home, all excited. She made me promise I'd be there. I promised. But on the day, a problem popped up at one of the branches, an important supplier threatening to break the contract, and I went to fix it. I was there from 2 in the afternoon until 9 at night. Clara's recital was at 4. When I got home that night, she was in her room, still in her dance costume, crying. Beatrice didn't even want to talk to me. Clara asked me why I wasn't there, and you know what I said? I said I had an important problem at work, that she'd understand when she got older, that I was doing it for her to give her a better life. Lies. All lies I told myself to justify my wrong choices. The truth is, I had chosen. I chose the supplier over my daughter. I chose money over love. I chose professional success over being a present father. And I made those choices repeatedly, hundreds of times, over years and years. Until Clara stopped inviting me to things, stopped sharing her life with me, stopped expecting me to be there. My success cost me my friends. I had a group in my youth, 5 guys who were like brothers: Juan, Roberto, Fernando, Gustavo, and Marcelo. We'd known each other since high school. We spent weekends together, had barbecues, played soccer, talked about everything. They were my groomsmen. I was godfather to their children. But little by little, as my business grew, I drifted away. At first, they understood. They'd call, invite me to Sunday barbecues, to weekend fishing trips. But I always had an excuse, always had something more important to do. And they persisted for a while. But people get tired. People give up. And eventually, they stopped calling. Juan died 7 years ago. Sudden heart attack at 69. I went to the funeral, and you know what hurt the most? The other 3 were there, hugging, crying together, reminiscing. Stories I wasn't a part of, trips they'd taken together in the last 20 years, moments they'd shared, and I was there, on the side, but at the same time completely outside. A stranger at my own childhood friend's funeral. Roberto came to talk to me that day. Said he'd missed me all these years. Said they'd tried to include me, but I always chose work. And he didn't say it with anger. He said it with sadness, a deep sadness of someone who lost a friend not to death, but to ambition. And worst of all, my success cost me myself. I spent so many years being the businessman, the boss, the winner, that I completely forgot who I was underneath it all. I forgot the things I loved to do when I was young, before all this madness started. I loved to fish. My dad used to take me fishing in the river when I was a kid, and those were the happiest moments of my childhood. The peace of the water, the silence, the connection with nature. I loved reading poetry. I had a collection of books by Carlos Drummond de Andrade, Fernando Pessoa, Manuel Bandeira. I'd spend hours reading, getting lost in the words, feeling the emotions those verses evoked. And I loved playing the guitar. I wasn't an expert, but I could manage. I'd play at gatherings with friends, at parties, just for the joy of making music. But all of that was left behind. All of it was sacrificed on the altar of success. The fishing rod stayed in the closet for decades. The poetry books gathered dust on the shelf. The guitar went out of tune, and the strings rusted, and I transformed into an empty shell, a robot programmed to work, earn money, conquer more. You see, the big mistake, the big lie they sold me and probably sold you too, is that professional success is the measure of a life well lived, that the more you achieve, the more you're worth, that money and status are synonymous with happiness, that if you work hard enough, sacrifice enough, you'll eventually reach a point where it will all be worth it, and that's a lie. It's a cruel, destructive lie that tears families apart, that hollows out lives, that turns people into soulless productivity machines, devoid of real purpose, of genuine human connection. Society programs you from an early age to believe this lie. Your parents tell you to study hard to get a good job. School prepares you to be productive. College teaches you to compete. The job market rewards you for sacrificing everything for work. And when you finally wake up, when you finally realize you've been duped, it's too late. The people you loved are gone. The opportunities to create memories have passed. The time you wasted will never come back. And you're left there at the end of your life, maybe rich, certainly professionally successful, but utterly empty inside. After Clara got out of the hospital, after I spent weeks reflecting on all of this, I made a decision. At 59, I decided to change. It wasn't easy. It wasn't fast, and it certainly wasn't comfortable, but it was absolutely necessary. I started by selling off part of the company. I brought in partners who could take over a good chunk of the operations. I delegated responsibilities that I always thought only I could handle. And for the first time in decades, I started working fewer hours. I started with 8 hours a day, then 6. Eventually, I reached a point where I was working 3 or 4 hours, just the essentials, just what truly needed my attention. And you know what happened? The company didn't collapse. Far from it. With competent people running the show, with well-established processes, the company continued to grow. And I, for the first time in my adult life, began to truly live. I started having regular dinners with Clara. It was awkward at first. We didn't quite know what to talk about. Decades of emotional distance don't resolve themselves overnight. But we persisted. Every Thursday, dinner together. No phones at the table, no talk of work. Just father and daughter talking about life, about dreams, about fears, about hopes. I got to know my son-in-law Rodrigo properly, not just in passing, but really know him. I discovered he's an incredible guy, a software engineer, but passionate about photography. We spent entire afternoons talking about photographic techniques, about composition, about light. He taught me to see the world differently through the lens. And when my grandchildren were born, Pedro 23 years ago and Sophia 20, I was there. I didn't miss their first words. Pedro said, "Dada," before Mama, and I was there to hear it. I didn't miss their first steps. Sophia took her first wobbly steps in my living room, and I filmed it all. I was there for the birthdays, the school plays, Pedro's soccer games, Sophia's ballet recitals. And you know what? Those moments, those childish laughs, those tight hugs, that feeling of being truly important to someone, not because of my money or status, but simply for being me, for being present, for loving and being loved, were worth more than any contract I ever signed, more than any figure I ever saw in my bank account, more than any Entrepreneur of the Year award I ever received. But here's the part that haunts me to this day, the part that wakes me up at 3 in the morning in a cold sweat. Even though I've changed, even though I've tried to make up for lost time, there are things that won't come back. There's damage that's permanent. There are losses that are irreversible. My marriage to Beatrice ended. She rebuilt her life, found Marcelo, was happy with him until he died of cancer 3 years ago. She lives on a small farm in the countryside now, tends a beautiful garden, has a peaceful life, and she's happy. I'm genuinely happy for her, but the truth that hurts to admit, is that I still love that woman. I still think about her. I still wonder what would have been if I had made different choices, if I had valued what we had while we had it. Clara's childhood is gone. There's no way to get it back. I can be present now. I can be a better grandfather than I was a father. I can try to compensate in some way, but those crucial years, those formative years where a girl needs her father, where she builds her self-image, her self-esteem, her sense of worth, I wasn't there. And that left scars on her, scars she carries to this day. She's been in therapy for years, working through issues of abandonment, of not feeling good enough, of overworking to prove her worth, all because of me. My childhood friends, many are gone. John died. Fernando died 4 years ago, also from heart problems. Robert has advanced Alzheimer's. He doesn't even recognize me anymore when I visit him at the nursing home. Only Gustavo and Marcelo are left, and we try to get together now and then, but it's not the same. Decades of distance have created an abyss we can't fully cross. And there's one thing that hurts more than all of this combined. My father died when I was 41. He was 68, and I was so busy building my success, so focused on proving to him that I had won, that I had achieved a better life than his, that I barely spent time with him in his final years. My father was a simple man. He worked his whole life as a laborer in a furniture factory. He didn't earn much, but he was a happy man. He enjoyed playing dominoes with the neighbors on Sundays. He liked tending the garden in the backyard. He liked sitting on the porch in the afternoon and watching the street life. Simple things. Things I scorned at the time because I thought they were signs of a mediocre life. He tried to connect with me several times. He'd call inviting me to lunch. He'd show up at the office without warning just to talk. He'd send messages through my mother saying he missed me. But I was always busy, always something more important to do. I always thought I'd have time later, that we'd get closer when I finally managed to prove my worth, when I finally reached where I wanted to get. But later never came. He died on a Sunday morning, alone at home. My mother had gone out to buy bread. He was sitting in his favorite armchair, watching football. His heart just stopped, and I was in Chicago at a trade show closing an important deal. I got the call from my mother at 10 in the morning. She was sobbing. I caught the first flight back, but it was too late. He had already been taken. When I arrived at the wake, I stood there looking at the casket, at his face so peaceful, so serene, and I realized I had wasted every chance I had. I didn't even say a proper goodbye. I didn't tell him I loved him. I didn't thank him for everything he did for me, for all the effort he put into giving me an education, into giving me opportunities he never had. I didn't ask for forgiveness for being an absent son, for prioritizing success over family. And that, my friend, that's a pain that doesn't fade. It's a regret that has stayed with me for over 40 years and will stay with me until the day I die. If I could go back in time, if I could talk to my 30-year-old self, you know what I'd say? I'd tell him to stop being an idiot, to stop thinking work is everything, to understand that success isn't measured in money, it's measured in love, in genuine connections, in moments lived fully, in truly being present for the people we love. I'd tell him to go to his daughter's school plays, to come home before 7 in the evening and have dinner with the family, to turn off his phone on weekends and really be present, to hug his wife every day and tell her he loves her, to play on the floor with his daughter even when he's tired, even when he thinks there are more important things to do, to call his dad just to chat, for no specific reason, just to hear his voice, just to say he's thinking of him. I'd tell him to understand that life is too short, ridiculously too short, to be wasted in an office, that no one, absolutely no one on their deathbed wishes they had worked more, that people remember you not for your professional achievements, not for the size of your company, not for the money in your bank account, but for how you made them feel, for the presence you had, for the love you gave, for the genuine attention you offered. I'd tell him to let go of this unhealthy obsession with proving something to someone, that he doesn't need to prove anything to anyone, that his worth as a human being isn't tied to the size of his bank account, that he's already enough, that he's already loved, that he doesn't need to conquer the world to deserve love and respect. But I can't go back in time. Nobody can. Time is an arrow that only flies in one direction. And once it's gone, it's gone. There's no replay. There's no second chance. There's no way to get it back. So the only thing left for me is to tell you my story in the sincere hope that you won't make the same mistakes I did, in the hope that you'll wake up before you lose everything that truly matters, in the hope that my suffering, my regret, my pain will serve as a warning to you. Look, I'm 84 years old now. My company is still around, still profitable, with over 50 branches across the country. But you know what? I don't care anymore. I handed over the reins to other people years ago. The money is there, it's true, and it gives me material comfort. I live in a nice house. I'm not struggling. I have excellent health insurance. But material comfort doesn't fill the void of a silent house. It doesn't replace the warmth of a true embrace. It doesn't bring back the people who are gone. It doesn't erase the regret that eats away at you from the inside. Today, I spend time with my grandkids when they can come visit. Peter is finishing up his architecture degree. Sarah is in her second year of pre-med. We get together every Sunday for lunch. It's the moment I look forward to most all week. I've started fishing again, too. I bought a small cabin near a river and go there twice a week. I spend hours there, in peace, just me and nature, thinking about life, processing everything I've lived through. I've started reading poetry again. I've discovered new authors, rediscovered the old ones I loved. Some days I spend the whole afternoon reading, moved by beautiful words, by deep feelings expressed in verse. And I've even started playing the guitar again from time to time, even with my fingers stiffened by age, even with arthritis making it difficult. I don't play as well as I used to, but I play, and it brings me a simple, pure joy that I had forgotten existed. And you know what? I'm happier now, with much less, than I was before, with much more. The irony is glaring, almost ridiculous. I spent my whole life chasing more, thinking happiness was in having more money, more success, more recognition, more achievements. And I only found peace, only found real happiness when I stopped chasing, when I learned to appreciate the simple things, when I learned that enough is sufficient. But the truth is, this peace has a bitter taste because it comes with regret. The crushing weight of knowing I wasted decades, that it could have been different, that it should have been different, that I had all the tools, all the opportunities, all the chances to do it differently, but I chose not to. And you tell me something with total honesty. What are you doing with your life right now? What exactly are you chasing? A promotion that will give you more money, but also more work hours? A better car to impress people you don't even like? A bigger house that will stay empty because you're never in it? Professional recognition from people who will forget you as soon as you leave the company? It's okay to want these things. I'm not saying ambition is bad. I'm not saying you shouldn't work hard. I'm not saying you shouldn't seek professional growth. But I'm asking you, with all sincerity, at what cost? At what price are you pursuing these goals? Are you sacrificing your marriage for it? Are you losing precious time with your young children who will never be little again? Are you drifting away from the people who truly love you, not for what you have, but for who you are? Are you neglecting to live experiences, create memories, cultivate relationships so you can work more, earn more, achieve more? Because if the answer is yes, you are making the exact same mistake I did. And one day, when you're my age, when you look back and take stock of your life, you'll realize that that achievement that seemed so important, so crucial, so fundamental, wasn't worth it. That you traded gold for tin. That you chased the shadow and let the substance slip away. That you gained the whole world but lost your own soul. My daughter, Clara, is 56 now. After that day in the hospital, after that scare that served as a brutal awakening, she changed too. It wasn't easy for her. She had to face pressure at work. She had to give up a promotion that was almost guaranteed. She had to deal with colleagues saying she was throwing her career away. But she persisted. She left that soul-crushing job and found a more balanced one at a smaller company. She's earning less, that's true, but she works 6 hours a day, gets real weekends, and is actually present for her kids, for her marriage, for her own life. She started therapy, started taking care of her mental health, and began to understand that she doesn't have to kill herself working to have value as a human being. And you know what she told me last week when we were grabbing lunch? She said, I saved her life. That if I hadn't had that difficult conversation in the hospital, if I hadn't finally woken up and owned my mistakes, she would have continued down the same self-destructive path all the way to a heart attack, a stroke, an early death. And she's grateful I had the courage to change, even if it was late, even though I paid a steep price. And that offers me some comfort, knowing that at least I managed to prevent her from making all my mistakes. That at least one good thing, one truly good thing, came out of all that suffering, all that regret. But still I wish I had woken up sooner, to have been a better father from the start, to not have needed a scare like that to open my eyes to what truly matters. Pedro, my oldest grandson, is 23 now. He's starting his career as a junior architect at a small but promising firm. And the other day, during one of those Sunday lunches, he asked me what advice I'd give him as he's starting out in his professional life. You know what I told him? I told him to never, absolutely never, under any circumstances, put work above family. To never sacrifice real relationships for money or status. To never forget that time is the most valuable resource there is, the only one that truly matters, and once it's gone forever. That he can always make more money, but he can't buy back the time